So we ready to start?
Sure.
All right. Can we have a roll call vote to begin this meeting? Jonathan?
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Lori?
Laurie Garcia, here.
Mayor LaChapelle?
Mayor LaChapelle here.
Marissa?
Marissa Cray here.
Mirren?
Aaron Goldstein here.
Shannon?
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Cynthia Kwasinski here. So welcome to our June 9th, 2020 school committee meeting. Do we have any announcements?
I think the only announcement we wanted to make, and forgive me, I just have to switch screens, is the next scheduled meetings are July 28th and August 11th. And so I guess I would just say at this point, stay tuned. We don't know if those will be in a Zoom format or at the 50 Payson. I doubt they're going to be at 50 Payson, but I just don't want to tell people the wrong information. So
we'll let that be known later on. Okay.
yes.
I believe we have correspondence.
Okay, so it looks like under correspondence, we have the MASC statement.
Yep.
So I'll read this. So this statement was put out by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees following the death of George Floyd. And I thank you for the opportunity to read this. I think it's a really important statement. So I will take a moment here. The Massachusetts Association of School Committees deplores the indefensible actions of the Minneapolis police that resulted in the murder of George Floyd. We further call upon all our national, state, and local leaders to recognize that Mr. Floyd's death and the demands of millions of Americans to respond must be addressed with not only swift and fair justice, but also with a national commitment to secure freedom from hate, bigotry, and social and economic injustice. As school leaders, we must look to those policies, practices, and procedures that often unintentionally produce inequitable outcomes for children at risk and adopt strong anti-racism policy statements locally to show our commitment to identify, challenge, and change values, structures, and behaviors that can create systemic racism. We call upon our colleagues and constituents at every level of government and in every school district to use their positions as leaders, educators, and mentors to the current and future generations to speak out and use their classrooms, schools, and their voices as instruments for securing social and economic justice for our students, their families, and their communities and their nation. We must move with purpose to ensure that we as a people act deliberately to demonstrate to all Americans that prejudice and hate will not be tolerated and will be challenged at every turn. So I would just add, in addition to sort of personally affirming the sentiments here that MAC put out, that I think obviously we all know that our district and our community has had to look really hard at ways that racism has manifested in our own school buildings, and we've looked with a lot of scrutiny at reforms we can make to how our district interacts with the police department. And so in a certain way, I think Easthampton is a bit ahead of the national conversation on a lot of these matters. But I think it's always good to take this not as just merely a rhetorical position, but a call to really remain vigilant in all of the policies and changes that we've been working on for the past few years, and to keep that up and look for places we can continue to advance and stay strong even after we are sort of we're approaching the end of our agreement with the Attorney General's office in the next couple of years. So, I think that's our only correspondence. Thank you.
Did anybody want to comment?
Cindy, I think we'll have some comments under the subcommittee reports, particularly from the equity committees.
Yep.
That had a lot of discussion around it this week.
Okay. I just didn't know before we went on if anybody wanted to say anything.
And would you let Dale into the meeting?
I just did.
I'm in.
Okay, so now's the portion of public speak. So if there's anybody who would like to say anything, Marissa will let you in.
If anyone wants to put their
Signal?
hand or use the little,
There's a little icon
there's an
for I would
icon
like
if you
to
don't have your
speak.
video going. If anyone sees someone that I'm missing.
I'm looking. No.
Okay. All right.
All right, I think we'll close public speak and go on. We're now on subcommittee updates. So we have finance.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so Finance Subcommittee met, and there's actually some notes from our June 1st meeting as a part of this packet. Obviously, we were looking, I think, both in terms of back towards what's going on with the fiscal year for 20, as well as having conversations and looking forward to FY21. You know, I think there's a couple key places there where there's some funding that not all funding has been, there's some room in our current budget and how we're very much seeking to buy forward, how we've been even directed by the state to buy forward, particularly things like resources for schools, staff, PPE and stuff like that, that we're being directed by the state. So I'm very hopeful that Mayor LaChapelle, with that kind of directive coming from the state, we're going to be able to move forward a little bit with some of those purchases that we're looking to do with our current funding, even before we get into FY21 fiscal budget. So, you know, I leave that obviously to your offices to communicate that and to have that conversation, but we certainly hope that we're going to be able to use some of the funding now that we have in our budget for next year's needs. So that's one of the conversations that we had. And then in terms of looking at next fiscal year, looking at, you know, what are some of our best case scenarios in terms of what the landscape is going to look like, and some of the worst case scenarios, since we're all still sort of unfolding as we go, and just trying to do some conversations around that and some forethought to be prepared as best we can.
So Mayor LaChapelle, you had your hand raised?
Yes, so I just looking a couple of things. One, clarification. The state directive, is that Department of Elementary and Secondary Education?
Yeah,
That's
from
giving that-
Desi,
right.
In the letter was definitely directly
Yeah.
saying that we should be buying PPE with our current budget for
Yeah.
next year and things like that. And I
Sure.
know that there's been some questions or comments back when we've tried to
Yeah.
do that recently. So
I have a great deal of respect for Desi and Commissioner Riley, but this is yet again another situation where he has put municipal governments on the opposite end of an argument. Commissioner Riley has no jurisdiction or authority to lift procurement and spending policies set by the governor's office, Department of Revenue, and the Department of Local Services. So we've already waiting on one piece of legislation because of the Board of Education and Commissioner Riley's interpretation of municipal spending around transportation. And this is yet another one. It's also my understanding that once the city's budget, hopefully, knock knock, is approved on the 17th, that the money will be able to be spent forward under regular procurement law. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't sought an exception. I don't know, Maren or Allison, maybe I have that wrong and we have to go for some exception. But I thought once the 2021 budget was passed and we know that amount of money, then that money that was not spent, you could start buying like PPEs or technology or whatnot. I don't know. Am I backwards on that?
I will defer to Dale, who deals primarily in the purchase orders, but my understanding is that in the past, that those, when we've submitted requests to the city, they've been sent back. And so
Right.
I just shared, the Wilmington case with the city
Yeah.
because I don't think that they're familiar with that case. And it's a practice that's done in every school district that I've ever worked in. So I think
Right.
we just you know, I think it's just a matter of we're both, I think we're just reading things differently, and I think it's just nuances, but I think we all have the same intent of trying to secure things as quickly as we can, knowing that everybody and their uncle will be looking for the same the same
Right. I
merchandise.
just don't want the miscommunication out
No.
there that the city is this and the city is that.
Yeah,
When it comes down to it, both our internal and external auditor will not allow these purchases to go through because it is not in the financial interest of the city. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And it's not that, and you know, Superintendent Leclerc, you know, as well as I do in our conversations, I want to know what you want to spend, like use this money this year for next year, because you know what the next question is what are we doing with the CARES Act money, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to put down in two different places the same items for the schools. We want to, I
absolutely.
mean, I want to know what you're going to spend and what you can get. So then when we're shifting over from reimbursement on the CARES for that 25% local match, we, you know, can use that CARES Act money the most efficiently for the schools next year, which I understand there's the guidelines I've seen so far are beyond overwhelming. And
It's dizzying. Yep.
yeah. And then it's just the kids who need the support for what they, I won't preaching to the choir, but yeah, no, I want that. But my last conversation with the auditor, was that once the budget is passed, that forward spending can happen. So let's get the paperwork in hand and get done. But you know, our auditors, I talked to them and they were like, no.
So just to clarify, so are we thinking that once the budget is approved after June 17th, then we will be able to buy ahead of time some PPE? Okay.
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I would defer to Dale and to Superintendent Leclerc about what can or needs to be bought. I mean, I trust their professional judgment. I mean, they and the leadership team know, and the schools and finance committee knows what the school needs. It's just that it's spent, you know, the way it needs to. I think the general idea here is that the city budget isn't finalized, and therefore the end of the year, it's hard to estimate or see how the end of fiscal 2020 will end up. So they don't want to they're not going to give a go ahead to take care of the surplus. That's my understanding. But
Okay. Marissa?
I just wanted to ask, clarifying whether I'm understanding that the commissioner is suggesting that individual districts are entirely financially responsible for PPE and other supplies that we'll need to create safe environments. And they're asking districts to compete to procure these things individually. There's no like coordinated state level effort to like increase capacity for procurement. Am I understanding that right?
I mean, I think the PPEs are on the school departments or school districts and or cities, depending on how they're financially structured. The state does have a unified or collaborative purchasing point on combis, where you know what you're buying, like you're buying from a vendor that's going to give you high quality, that there's a certain price. I think that there's a conversation to be had with PPEs and the school department, knowing their needs, but also other departments. And I'm not sure, I mean, if we're mindful of doing one big PPP order in the beginning or whatever times with the school districts, do we get like another price point or price break? I don't know that. I'll hand it over to Allison, but the last thing is I don't know what we're going to need for the city in November, barely in September. I don't know if school has, it seems everything is changing. So Superintendent?
Yeah, I know we're in the subcommittee report, so I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I will talk about this in my COVID section. the mayor is correct. There are a set of vendors that have been approved at the state level that we can access, for the best pricing. But yes, it is the responsibility of the school districts and or their cities to purchase the PPE equipment that we will need for the schools. We are also working with the collaborative in Northampton to look at bulk buying for many school districts to see if we can get better rates. It's pretty prescriptive what we will need, so there won't be too much deviation from school district to school district. Northampton will need the same exact things that Easthampton needs, so we might as well pool our, ordering ability. So I can get more into that after, and I can talk a little bit about, yes, we will be putting out money to purchase these items, but we are hoping to get reimbursed somewhere down the road for these purchases. So, yes, we have to put out money, but then we're hoping to get some reimbursement down the road, as the city would as well, hopefully, so that would be our intent. But it is, a challenge, and, there's a lot that needs to be considered early on. We need to be prepared. So I can go into that more. I know you're in the midst of your committee report, so I don't want to take up too much time.
But I do think Marissa's right. Our understanding is that Commissioner Riley is basically saying, look, you better order fairly quickly because there's going to be a run on all this stuff. And it's going to be up to the schools to make sure they have it so that they can open. And it's a crazy situation. We have talked about this. Maren, anything more with finance? We kind of...
Dale's raising her hand, so.
Yeah.
I just want to give a really concrete example about why we're feeling such pressure to order as soon as possible. We actually ordered some of the equipment that we knew we were going to need when this was around the corner at the end of February that we've still not received. And it's because things are tremendously back ordered. We ordered a particular cleaning equipment, 4 of them. We've had 1 delivered since February.
Wow. Crazy situation. Anything more?
I just really need to make this point clear. I would suggest everyone on this call and listening calls Commissioner Riley and say, do not put these financial directives out without talking to his colleague at the Department of Local Services, Sean Cronin, because they are going like this. I couldn't spend that money to get that stuff if it could be gotten if I wanted to. So I'm frustrated to the nth with that. It's completely unfair, and school departments will have to spend more money than they have to, and they should be spending it on learning material and on teachers. So I am, if you can't tell, I'm a little, that's all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maren, anything more?
No, I think that, I think Dr. Leclerc is going to cover some more of the different aspects as we're looking forward into what FY21 could develop to look like. So I'll leave it there for now.
Okay. Do we have any other subcommittee reports? No? Okay. Then we go on to...
No, Cynthia.
What did I miss?
Policy committee and then equity committees at least.
Right. But I just asked, does anybody do you have a policy committee? Thank you, Shannon. I did not see you before. I didn't see your hand. Go.
Okay, policy, we have a meeting coming up on Tuesday.
Okay.
I will send out the agenda by Thursday.
Next Tuesday?
And I don't know, Maren, do you want me to go first on the equity?
Yeah, why don't you go first?
Okay.
All right, we had a wonderful conversation last night. It was good to see everybody after so long and being with what's happening in the country right now. It seemed like it was perfect timing for us to get together and kind of brainstorm and see where we're going for next year. with the group, now that we've met the requirements of the Attorney General's office, we didn't want to disband. We want to keep going. This is work that's going to go on forever. It's not going to stop because the AG says we're doing okay. So we're kind of breaking off into some work groups. I'm not sure what's happening with the pre-K. I haven't had a chance to talk to Maren, but we're going to break off into some work groups, come up with a mission statement, kind of, to see where we're going from here. Allison had some great ideas, and so did Bill, as far as what they need from us, and really Asher did too. So I think, I feel like we're going to be more of a advisory group going forward, which is kind of what we've been all along, but we're just taking it a little step further and getting more into some of the, help me out, Allison. Getting into some of the curriculum.
Yeah, making real recommendations for tweaks and adjustments that need to be made concretely to adjust curriculum and programming that we're doing.
And one of the other things that we really want to focus on in the next month or two is getting more people involved. We're finding that at the pre-K through 8 level, there's so many parents involved and students. We're losing some focus on high school parents and families, and we want to move forward with that as well. Did I miss anything? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll give a quick update then from the pre-K through 8 Equity Committee. We actually just met before this meeting, so we just finished up before our school committee started. I think that there was a number of things that we were sort of talking about, and obviously it is, as Shannon said, it's a very timely conversation, and it's also a conversation that we've been having here in the school committee for several months now, is looking at the equity aspects of teaching online. The challenges, particularly for our English as second language students or our special education students, the challenges that come around online learning, and where we've been successful, where we've tried our best and not quite met, but done the best we could. Our learning, our improving, all those different pieces are certainly a part of what our teachers and administrators have been doing. And so we talked a little bit about that, as well as starting to look out to next year, with some of the directives just starting to be formulated from the state level. There's going to be some challenges there, and we have to really pay attention to how does, not only do we meet the best learning standards we can for our district, for the sort of average student, we have to make sure that we also really do the best we can for all our students who are more on the fringe groups, whether for an equity reason or a disability reason or what have you. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I know that's going to be a lot of important conversations happening over the summer, but we were sort of scratching the surface of that. Looking at, I think one of the really interesting ideas that popped out to me was that when we are doing online classes, it doesn't mean we only have to meet with our own students with our own school district. Maybe there's a way to do some of the English as second language classes that cross over with other school districts that have maybe a more robust English as second language program, or a teacher who's more versed at doing it online, or things like that we can try to look at connecting into our region or state that may have some additional resources. And I know there's budgetary impacts and there's all kinds of challenges there, so I don't mean to gloss that over, but I think that there's, as we do look at at least the online aspects there, there's some great resources that we might want to think about and bring to bear for our students that are particularly most challenged by what's going to be and what has been our sort of normal education sort of models. So that was part of it. I think that there's also some really great conversations happening about how do we make sure that we do sort of a text or a curriculum audit, reviewing sort of where white supremacy has sort of become a part of our normal teaching styles, and what we can do to think about how we cover those most important topics, whether it's the Pilgrims and the white colonizers or slavery. There's lots of ways that we can make sure that we're really making sure that our education curriculum, the texts that we're using, all those things are actually really not just used as this is what we've always used, or this is, but really make sure that we're looking at it, reviewing it, making sure that we don't spread the wrong message, the message that gives the wrong impression to our young students around white supremacy or around race or all those kind of politics issues. So that was also part of it. And then just a lot of the sort of other groups doing work and connections happening across our community and across the region, looking at the systemic racism issues that are happening both in our nation as well as locally, and how we can sort of change some of those issues. So there's some really great conversations that were happening. Just sort of looking through my notes. I think one of the other pieces that came up that was a part of that conversation too around equity is around food security. And I think that I would call out Dale has doing a lot of great work, making sure that we've been able to get those lunches out to students. And I think that's, even mentioning that there's a letter that just went out from Dr. LeClaire today that was mentioning that we're going to be, and I don't want to, again, I'm worried about taking your thunder there, but that we're still getting lunches out there through the end of this week by delivery, and then looking at through the end of this month, and potentially moving to more satellite locations so that there's easier access for students to be able to get that. But that's going to be sort of coming out, and then we're also ongoing as a district trying to look at ways that it might still happen for this summer. And so just trying to meet the food security issues as an equity issue as well across our district. So lots of good conversations, really great to have everybody involved. And again, Shannon mentioned we've got students, we've got parents, we've got administrators and teachers. So it's a good group meeting and looking at how to sort of engage our whole teaching schools and sort of vertical alignment across those, as well as into the broader community as well. So
Awesome. Sounds like excellent work. Very exciting. Anybody else? Wellness? Anybody want to comment on the equity work before we move on? No? All right. Okay, on to school closure COVID update.
Marissa, can you share your screen? Can you give me the ability? Thank you. All right, so let me see if I can share.
You should be able to now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, okay. I want to, too many tabs, that's the problem. Okay, I wanted to share this screen with you. Do you need me to make it bigger? Can you see it okay?
You can see it.
Good.
Okay. So this was a document that came out from the CDC a few weeks ago, and I just want to point it out to people. It's a document that we've been looking at the district level. So just to let everyone know, we've been looking at the CDC guidance. There's a lengthier document. This isn't like an infographic. If you see CDC type infographics on news or media sites, I would look at them very carefully to see what the source is, because this is directly from the CDC. Others that are out there have CDC information on them, but they've had words tweaked in them and they may not be 100% accurate. So this is from the CDC. You can find this at cdc.org if anyone wants a copy of it, or if they want to get one from me, I'm happy to share. And so they sent this out. They also produced a lengthier document, which I've shared with all the administrators, And I shared it with all the members of our subcommittees or the administrators that are facilitating those meetings as a little bit of light reading, if you will. So we're really starting to begin to look at all of the guidance. We have been looking at all of the guidance. And then just recently over the weekend, the commissioner released his information in the form of a 7-page document around the PPE that we need to secure for the start of school next year. So, I want to be clear, it is our intent to come back to school in the fall. We are a community where people do not have the luxury of staying home to care, for their children and educate their children. Most of the people in our community need to get back to work. Most of the people in the state and nationally need to get back to work. And in order for our economy to get back to business, school needs to reopen everywhere. So school does need to happen. We are waiting to find out the nuances around what this will look like. And I know some communities have started to speculate by putting out possible plans. And we really feel that that's premature at this point. We really feel as though we need to educate ourselves as much as we can. We need to absorb all the information. We need to process what it will look like in Easthampton. And we need to wait for the guidance coming from the commissioner in the next few weeks. We anticipate we will not have all of our students in our buildings at the same time. That's messaging that we've heard both at the state level, the national level, and internationally, where schools are beginning to come back. I've been on Zoom conference calls talking to leaders in Germany, Sweden, United Kingdom, South Korea, all over. So we're really having these deep conversations, what's working, what's not, and, what will it look like? We anticipate that young children will not move very much within the school day. They will stay within classrooms and won't go to art class or to gym class or to music class. Primarily, those instructors would come to them. So there's less cross-contamination or less likelihood. There'll be a lot of hand washing. Everyone will be wearing masks, students and adults. We will be providing masks for staff, and we will have masks available for any students that don't bring their masks. We know that transportation will look different in the fall. There will be less students on a bus, and that's part of what the survey will be that we send out this summer. I anticipate more families will want to transport their own children rather than putting them on a bus. So there are all kinds of things that we are considering, and there will be some probably remote aspect of this plan. We anticipate that teachers will be working in both modes. They'll be face-to-face with children sometimes, and sometimes they will be working remotely, or it could be simultaneously. In other words, they may have a web camera on them, and so some students are accessing them from home on their computers, and some students are accessing them face-to-face, and they'll switch throughout the day, week, every other week. We don't know how that will look yet. It's not a perfect plan. It really, no matter what comes out, it will not be a perfect plan. There will be stumbling blocks. There will be obstacles to overcome. And I think that's important for everyone to understand. Our ideal is to have all our students back in our schools and to be operating as quote unquote normal. But we anticipate the fall is not going to look normal. And I've said that to this committee before. And I think it's important for people to understand that we're really thinking very carefully about how to keep our students safe, about how to keep the adults that work in our schools safe, and how to educate students the best we can given the difficult circumstances. A little later on this evening, I'll talk to you about the survey results from our remote learning survey, which you asked me to share with you. But what I will say is having an all remote model, that presents a lot of challenges as well. That's not fair to parents. Parents are not educators. You know, this isn't what they went to college for, or that this isn't in their wheelhouse. And it's very challenging for families to maintain jobs or, you know, pay attention to all of their children and try to educate children on all the different things that they need to know. Having them in school with a teacher is the ideal. We know that. And I think it's just going to be difficult to achieve that 100% right off the bat. I think we're going to have to be fluid and we're going to have to be flexible in what we're doing. And so I will reiterate, as I said last time we had a committee meeting, we have subcommittees that will be working on just really thinking of all the issues surrounding what does it mean to go back into the building? What does it mean, you know, for education? What are our technology needs? What are our PPE needs? What are our staffing needs? You know, we're really trying to look at every issue we can. So I just point you to this document. You know, we really have studied this. We know that students will come into the building and there'll be certain practices that they will take part in, like hand washing, possibly random temperature checks. They'll go into classes. They'll be washing their hands throughout the day, more often than usual. If a student is sick, they will be isolated in a separate room near the nurse's office. We have to increase our nursing space. There are all kinds of nuances that we have to adjust to. So that's where we are right now. And I just wanted to share that out and take questions from anyone on the committee if you have questions or want to make comments.
For me, it's too early to make too many comments. I know that as a teacher myself, I have a lot of parents worried not only for their students, but for their students coming back home and exposing them to COVID. So the anxiety level about reopening is really, it's really quite high. And I think that we really aren't going to know a firm plan till much later in the summer.
Yes.
We're going to have to look at numbers in June, numbers in July. We're going to have to refocus, maybe do some adjustments. And I think it's really going to be much closer to the middle or end of August before we really know what kind of a plan is going to be tried. So it's just a really hard time. And there aren't a lot of answers yet. There's some hopes and some guidance, but there's an awful lot of pieces, especially, you know, the size of your classroom. How do you run school when you can only have a certain number of people in a room?
Right. And for those that don't know, the guidance is really suggesting we have about 10 to 12 students in a classroom, right, so that we can maintain 6 feet between students.
So how do you staff?
Right.
You know, how do you staff
so
the other 10?
We're challenged with that right now. We're thinking about it. We're emptying classrooms out right now. We're rolling up carpets. There won't be circle time. You know, we're packing away Legos and things that students might share at a center together. They're not going to be sharing, you know, so there's a lot of that work going on right now so that we can, you know, think about the layout in our classrooms, what that will be in the fall, and trying out different ways to do it safely. But yeah.
Lori?
So I appreciate that you're trying to plan ahead for the unknown, but also as an educator, I'm very concerned about curriculum and teaching strategies in the classroom when teachers have to plan for a divided population. at different times. And I think it's important to find funding, possibly from the CARE Act, to request that certain teachers volunteer to work and get professional development money this summer, not wait till the end of August till we know that they're going to have these challenges, and work on different curriculum and strategies to be able to better educate our students having this mixed scenario, and not wait till the end. So I'm wondering if the mayor, she alluded to CARE funding from the CARE Act, if we could designate certain funding for professional development at this point, so teachers know that they will have some type of payment for working on these strategies in the summer.
So if I could just, I don't want to step on the mayor's toes, but I just want to clarify, there are different pools of CARES money. And so the CARES money that the mayor is talking about, I believe, and she'll correct me, is a pool of federal dollars used for the reimbursement that cities and towns are putting out for PPE-related expenses. In addition to that, schools have a CARES Act grant. That's a separate source of funding. And that was, I think, back at the beginning of the meeting, the mayor said to me, what are you using that money for? So there's a grant, and I don't want people to hear the word grant and think it's extra money. It's money from the federal government that's being funneled through the Department of Education with the idea that schools' funding will be deeply impacted this year. So it's like stimulus, it's to stimulate our programming and the work that we're doing. So we are intending to put the professional development that you just spoke about, Laurie, in the CARES Act grant that we're doing as a school district, because that's a perfect example of something that, we can put it into this grant funding, this stimulus funds that we have. It's not really reimbursable, I don't believe, through the pool of money that the mayor has access to, or the group that she's working with. But it's a perfect expense. We already have that. We've already put information out to our teachers. Julianne Levin, our curriculum director, has already communicated that out. We know there's a lot of curriculum work that needs to take place this summer. And in addition to sitting in a Zoom meeting or around a table to unpack curriculum and have discussions around where we focus, we also acknowledge that we need to have professional development around improving strategies for teaching. So there's the content and there's the actual practice, if you will. So those are two things that we intend on putting in the grant portion of that money. And so if the mayor wants to, if I'm not correct, the mayor can correct me on that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. LeClaire.
Yeah, I mean, there are these three pools of money that before us right now, and one of them is specifically from the governor to school districts. That's by a preset formulation, and the school districts exclusively has access to that for exactly what the superintendent just explained. And then there's what I call FEMA money, which is the emergency money and PPEs and whatnot, that has a 25% local match, which means, if we bought $100 worth of PPE, it would be on the municipality to pay $25. And because of just the extraordinariness of this pandemic, any pandemic, that $25 match I just spoke about can roll into the CARES Act. And so it wouldn't come back to individual departments. And there is still money in the CARE Act money that is city that will be used to help the schools. I mean, it helps all of the departments, and we have some building issues ourselves. And I won't bore with the detail, but Dale has been working with the treasurer around getting that 25% local match, make sure we get that. And we want to be really conscious of what what the school needs to spend and what money they're using. So we're supplementing and stacking dollars as best we can to get the most we possibly can for our students.
If I could just add something too, I think that again, coming off that conversation about equity, but also really just thinking as we have more conversations about next year, it's I would certainly, I know that you're in a lot of great conversations, Dr. Leclerc, about, you know, getting resources from other places and stuff, but I think that looking at what is available as a region, you know, online curriculum development or online, you know, teaching professional development like is just being talked about, but also how to share some of those online classes and potentially have cross teaching happening with some of the other districts in the area. That there might be some ways that we can push the envelope, you know, that allows us to have more resources as a region in our education. So I hope that we won't be, you know, too siloed in our school district and not think outside that box and how we can help each other with all our different strengths in the different school districts that we're close to.
Thank you, Maren. We have weekly regional superintendents conversations, Zoom meetings. So we have a lot of discussions around that, and I will definitely circle back to that with them.
Thank you.
Anything else before we go on to school building project update?
Yes, I would just ask one question. I really appreciate sort of thinking about this from the teachers and curricular perspective, and then also thinking about it from the parents' perspective. I totally get that this is a really ongoing situation, rapidly evolving, and we're waiting on guidance and waiting on additional information. But particularly for parents of younger children who are anticipating having to come up with some creative way to patch together childcare next fall. Are we able to at least communicate to families in the district that like we expect we'll have a plan to release by the beginning of August, or, you know, like that, so we can at least anticipate when we might have that in place?
Yes, I think that's very realistic.
Okay.
You know, we anticipate having the guidance in mid-June. It may be delayed. You never know what could happen, but I would anticipate by the end of June, we would have the guidance. And then it will be pretty much the sole focus of our summer work. And there will be a lot of attention spent on figuring this out. And we do realize that, and I don't want to upset people, but we do realize that the younger population is particularly challenging because of the childcare issues. You know, the high schoolers are a little bit more self-sufficient, but we know that families really need to address the elementary school children. So that's really going to be a focus for us, you know, how we can do it. And again, I'd reiterate what I just said to Maren. You know, we are having discussions at the regional level about how this would look, because we know that my teachers may have children in the community next door and vice versa. So in order for this to work, we all need to be kind of on the same page and collaborating with one another and kind of shifting back and forth with, you know, troubleshooting some of the challenges that we face. So that has been an ongoing dialogue.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? All right, then let's go on to our school building project.
Okay, so I don't have anything to show you on here on the screen, so I can stop sharing the screen right now.
There
And
you
what
go.
what I will say is that the steel is going up and the building is really taking shape. And just another a comment that I would make around the building project. The main entrance is pretty difficult to navigate right now. They've kind of taken it over for the month of June because of some of the steel and getting all of that on site, some of the work they have to do. So to my understanding, the Button Road gate has been open. I mean, you don't really have a reason to go to Whitebrook right now. And I would just say that the other thing that I've heard that I would like to say for those people that are listening is the school site is not really a site for pedestrians at this time. I've been told by some of the construction team that pedestrians are still trying to walk in. I think a lot of people for years have walked around Whitebrook and some, in a nice area to walk in. But it has become rather challenging. And so I would just say that it's probably not the ideal to be walking around there right now. Of course, everything, that's dangerous is fenced off, but still, it is a work site. And so I think it's better to find someplace else to walk for a little while.
Dr. LeClaire, we do walk that route often, and we go through Button Road, and it's very separated. There is,
Yes.
so I want people to
Yeah.
realize you don't need to walk through the construction site. There is a fenced off area to walk right back up to
Yeah.
Park Street. So that still can be done without
Thank
going
you.
anywhere near the construction.
Yes, yes.
And I would just add too, just because of having recently done this, that there's, I wanted to thank the maintenance crew there at Whitebrook that they actually mowed the path on the backside so that, because there is ability to access the trails and the woods in Nunatak behind Whitebrook still by going to the south of the building and back around there. You can still access all those great trails. So I think that people do have access to that. But yes, definitely staying away from the construction zone on the north side of the property. It's fenced and it's pretty clear where you can and can't go. But there are trails that are being mowed to show people how to get around the south side of the building out to the trails on the east.
Okay. On to our superintendent update.
So there's something that's not on here, but Dale is in the meeting with me, and Dale is here because of the transportation. We wanted to come back to you with more information around transportation. And so, Marissa, can you let me share this? Can you share that? Can you allow me to share again? And I'm going to share with you recent legislation that was just voted on in the Senate. I don't know if yesterday was the day. The mayor may want to chime in. She knows more about that than I do, I'm sure.
You should be allowed to share, Allison.
Okay. So I'm just going to bring this up and let me find it. No, that's not it. There it is. So this is the, I can go back up to the top. Do you want to see the beginning?
I don't see it at all.
I don't see anything.
So it showed up and then it disappeared.
Okay, let me see if I can share. Let me see if I can do it again. Any better?
Yeah.
We see it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the section of the legislation that was just approved, I believe yesterday, around the contracts with transportation providers. And it says, because it's kind of small, I'll just read you this one paragraph. Notwithstanding sections 52 and 56 of Chapter 41 of the general laws, a city or town may approve a payment for the period beginning on or after March 10th, 2020, through the remainder of fiscal year 2020 on an existing service contract for school or education-related services entered into by the school committee or a service contract renegotiated or modified by the school committee in order to maintain the availability of and access to the services secured under the underlying contract between the parties, provided, however, that one, the underlying service contract was in effect before March 10th, 2020, and the service contractor was unable to perform services under the contract as a result of the governor's March 10th, 2020 declaration of a state of emergency or the outbreak of the 2019 novel coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. And two, there are sufficient unencumbered available funds remaining for such payment in the appropriation for the purpose. This is, I think, what we have been waiting for a little bit of guidance. I think that the mayor would probably help you recall that this was another one of those instances where the school department was told one thing from the Department of Ed, and the city had another way of looking at the issue that was contradictory. And so it was two ships passing in the night, if you will. And so I know we've come to you around this before. I will say that Dale has worked, she's still working on these two bus transportation contracts. And she may want to speak, but, you know, it really is, I think, I want to remind this committee that Durham has stepped up and has provided transportation services to us for the last few months, delivering meals, and they have not seen a dime from us since March. So I really think that we need to solve this problem. Our other transportation company, our special ed transportation company, Vanpool, has also not received a dime from us. So I really would be looking for some continued dialogue around this. And if there are questions that Dale or I can answer around this, I would like to see them get some reimbursement because what happened was due, you know, they were not able to deliver these services because of COVID-19. So it was not an issue on their end. It was an act of God, if you will. And so I open it up to anyone that would like to speak, and please let me know if you don't agree.
Lori? Lori, you're still muted.
Yes, I am muted. And I know I was one to say that I didn't feel that we should pay, I believe we were talking about 72%, correct? Was that the percentage,
Dale,
Dale?
can you give us the figures?
I remember 72.
74 and a half is the
Oh,
yellow,
sorry.
where we got with the
74 and a
yellow
half.
school bus.
I never said that we shouldn't pay them anything. I just felt that we should pay them a percentage that was more realistic for the services they were providing. And you had told us that the special education busing hadn't done anything. And I also brought up something I brought up many times, that the state is quick to determine that we should pay for this, but they really have gone back on transportation promises that they've made over the years for funding, especially for regional schools, which I know we aren't. So that's what I had said, never that we shouldn't pay something. So I just wanted to reiterate what I had said 2 meetings ago or 3 meetings ago.
So I don't know if it would be helpful for me to review how they arrived upon the 74.5%. Is that helpful or no?
I think it's helpful in a public meeting, yep.
Okay. So they started with what it would cost, the percentage of our daily rate that would be cover driver's wages, employment taxes, and benefits. And that got to about 64% of our daily rate. And then they looked at the ongoing fixed costs that they have as an obligation to us as being under contract, regardless of whether kids are on the bus. And they included things like inspections, driver training, maintenance of the buses, insurance, the lease on their terminal building, which is on Ferry Street in Easthampton, and any leases on buses, that equipment that was outstanding. And that's how they got to the 74.5%. If they covered those things, then that was 74.5% of our daily rate.
So are you suggesting that their employees, nobody collected unemployment?
They did not lay anybody off to date. However, because they've not gotten any compensation on our contract, they are laying off employees for a month starting the end of this week.
Dale, can we look at the two companies as separate right now? Because one is providing service to us every week. And I see that as one conversation. And so if we could first take care of that one, I think that would help, and then go to the van pool, which has not provided any service, and talk about that second. Does that make sense?
That's fine with me. All of the detail that I've given you today is detail that pertains to Durham, the yellow bus regular transportation provider. I've not given any detail this evening relative to van pool.
Okay.
Yes.
So Marissa?
And so they have not yet laid off employees, but they plan to. And will that layoff occur even if we do pay this 74% that they're asking for?
I don't know. I do not know.
Can I interject? I believe that we already took a vote on the yellow bus, right? And made a recommendation that we do go forward with paying that at 74.8%.
You did.
I need to ask you to retake that in open session.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So do we want to discuss that and then take a vote? We're talking just Durham right now.
Well, I would put forth a motion to provide funding to Durham for their bus services per our transportation contract at the 74.8% negotiated pricing for ongoing services.
Do we have a second?
So just to clarify, that was 74.5 or 74.8?
74.5.
Correct.
I will second that motion.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I think that Marissa had a very good question, and I don't understand why we're talking about that same percentage if we don't know if they're going to lay off people and then they'll be on unemployment, and they had projected that cost paying their employees. I'm sorry. I just
Okay.
think it was a very good question that Marissa had.
But I think that the point to understand is their employees are still employed as of this Friday.
Right.
Our school year would have ended on the 18th, and then the payment would have ceased. So we're talking maybe 4 days on unemployment. You know, we don't pay them for work in the summer.
And they typically lay their employees off during the summer.
Allison, do you want to stop sharing the screen since we won't?
Oh, I can. I didn't know if
That's
anyone,
okay.
I didn't know if anyone had any questions about this legislature. This went through the Senate and the House, and this is brand new.
And Lori, I would just put my own thought on this is that, again, I mean, we have had 3 months of the services that was negotiated. And yes, I understand the concern about this one additional week. But I think that overall, us putting forward the funds that have been negotiated and seen as what would be the best case scenario. Given that going into next year, we're going to want to have good relationships with our busing companies, and having a lot of negotiations about how we're going to do busing next year, I think is a really important piece for us to include in this conversation. So I don't want to minimize the upcoming layoffs that they're planning, but as they lay off people in the summer already, so maybe it's a question of a week or not, but difference than it might have otherwise been. But to me, there's been 3 months of support and looking towards next year. There's going to definitely need to be a lot of negotiations around how we're going to do this and how we're going to do this together. And so I think that I want to, personally, as a school committee member, I want to put forward to support them as we look forward to the future as well.
Well,
And I just want to reiterate, this was never against the bus company. It was the state mandating us to pay for services that they never back up what they say they're going to pay for many different areas. So I don't have anything against the bus company. I'm saying that again.
But I also feel really good about the bus company already providing a service. They weren't transporting kids, but they were transporting meals.
I agree.
So I feel pretty okay about the negotiated amount is 74.5 because they've been working right along providing us that service. Do we have any more discussion? Are we ready for a vote? Okay, we had a motion to approve the payment of 74.5. It's been seconded. We'll have a roll call vote. Lori?
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Shannon?
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Maren?
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Marissa?
Marissa Carreri, aye.
Jonathan?
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Mayor LaChapelle?
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Cynthia Kwasinski, aye. So that was good. All right, should we talk about the second one? The van pool? Dale, do you want to lead that charge? Allison?
I think Dale can give us the specifics on the conversations with them. And I
So
think
what I can say to you is it's true. Van Pools has provided no services to the district since the closure. The March 13th was the last day that they provided any services. Although they have consistently said that they will do anything we want them to do. We've not asked them to do anything because the only thing the school department needed to transport, Durham was able to meet those needs. There was some talk of potentially the city having some transportation needs that Van Pool could have met, but they didn't come to fruition. They met those needs in other ways, so they've done nothing to date. However, we lose our ability to deliver meals to children as of this Friday. That's a need that potentially goes forward at least till the end of June, and definitely and potentially through the summer. We've got a brief survey out right now to try to determine what the meal need is in the community for the summer, and whether delivery is something that is still essential. At the time we delivered meals, it was because of the extreme lockdown that people were at home. That has gone away. I don't know that it's eased the need in the community enough to say that we don't need to deliver meals. I don't know that at this point. So anyway, that's sort of the service end of it. Where the very last place we were in terms of pricing, what they would like to come to agreement about is they were looking for 75% of the daily rate up until May 15th. And that's because they kept employees employed until that point, because we were in discussions. And then they would look for 48% from May 15th to the end of the school year because they laid off all of our employees after May 15th.
So what is that 48% covering?
The fixed cost end of their operation.
So I think that would be insurance, even though the van is
Right.
sitting there, just
Right.
like your car may have sat there in your driveway for 6 weeks, you were still paying for the maintenance, you were still paying for the insurance, it was still that you were still making payments on it. So I think probably the leasing of the vehicles, the insurance costs.
Correct.
Dale, do you have that
housed.
broken down? Have they offered that to you? I'm just, because it seemed if it's 68 to 48, so only 20% of their operating budget goes to employee salary seems a bit low.
Yeah, I don't know what their fixed costs are around leasing vehicles. We're at the tail end of the contract with Durham. So they potentially, depending on how they structured our contract, have satisfied the majority of their lease payments on those buses, and they have less in terms of lease payments, is my guess. But I don't know that for sure.
I think that's an interesting question though, because so it's a little bit more than that because it was 75 down to 48. So it's about 30%, whereas Durham was saying that their staffing costs were 64% of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the two contracts were roughly the same price. So I guess my question is, with that information, is it safe to assume that there are significantly fewer drivers fulfilling the special education contract, and that's why more of the cost goes towards those fixed costs of operating?
Well, it's the length of time that their drivers are driving is significantly less.
Gotcha.
We have seven buses on the Durham contract, and there are fewer vehicles on the Vanpool contract.
So were you suggesting that
Fewer drivers driving less time.
Were you suggesting that Vanpool might be able to fulfill some of the summer delivery needs?
I have not asked them the question, but they've offered multiple times to do whatever we needed them to do. And if there was some indication that we were going to come to some kind of an agreement with them, certainly something I could explore. I didn't want to go too far down that road because these conversations, it has seemed to me that the committee was less inclined to come to agreement with them than with the outfit that was already providing service.
I mean, I think we would have the same conversation if we knew that Vanpool was going to be delivering meals. There's a big difference. I think the initial conversation had to do with one company was actually providing a service, a very needy service to the city, and the other was not. And if Vanpool is willing to provide that service for the summer, I think that's a different conversation. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but that feels very different to me.
So can I ask you a question? Are you saying that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but are you saying that if they would commit to doing the meals in the summer, you would approve their request that Dale articulated below, the 75% and then whatever the second one was?
48.
48.
Yeah.
48.
Because I think
Alternatively,
it's difficult for us to have the conversation with them when we haven't
Correct.
provided
Correct.
any payment to
Correct.
them yet. So
Right. I mean, so one of the things we've talked about is that, sorry, Dale, 1 second. I think that we're trying to keep good relations with both companies because we don't want to lose them for next year, and we're going to need them, and it's going to be a whole new ball game as to how we're going to transport kids. So we want a good relationship there. I just, I know that when we were starting this out with knowing what's happening to the economy, our feeling was that we didn't want to pay for no service. And to me, that's a different idea that upon hearing it, I'm a lot more receptive to working that out. And Dale, you might want to chime in again, but.
What I was going to suggest is it might make sense to say that this discussion had taken place, and given the legislation and a need that we've discovered that we potentially have for summer, that the committee is more inclined to come to some agreement and ask them to put forward their best, but their best, their lowest, that the terms that they had in their last one still seemed high, and knowing that the committee is inclined to come to agreement around something, could he relook at that and put forward better, lower numbers?
Well, I think they just seemed high for no service. If you're not doing anything and you're asking for almost the same amount of money as the company who's providing all these great meals to our families, that's a very different picture. So somebody else weigh in. I said my piece. Yes.
So we mentioned that Durham will be laying off employees at the end of this week, but that's something that they were likely planning to do anyways, as it's a practice they have during the summer. Do we know if Vanpool also lays off employees during the summer? And if so, is that going to require sort of a brand new contract here where simply paying them for paying the employees before the school year ended, from their perspective, is that not going to be enough as we now look to something else this summer? Does that make sense?
That's a good question.
So what I would suggest is to let them know that whatever agreement is struck, and it has to be an amendment to the current contract, we would need to write something up. It needs to include whatever our needs are over the summer as part of payment against the contract that already existed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to me, Maren.
So I would just add to this conversation that, our next meeting doesn't really make for additional negotiations to happen before we could make a decision, right? I mean, our next meeting happens late July. So I would suggest that we find a way to make a decision as a group. It may not be the most preferred method to do this, but to then make a decision, maybe plan A and plan B, and put it then in the hands of Dale and Allison to actually put into practice.
I think that's a very good idea. So do we have a plan A?
And if I could just clarify for the committee, I think everyone knows this, but I just feel it's important to state. Vanpool provides the transportation for our foster care students that are coming from outside the community. They provide, or are going outside of the community, either way. They provide the transportation for all our special needs students that are on substantially separate transportation, and they also provide the transportation for our homeless population. So I would just, I really recommend that we come up with something, because we are going to be sorely pressed to find a transportation company that does those things for us in the fall. And my fear is that with the way the economy is right now, we're going to be looking at more homelessness, more displaced students. And it's definitely not a conversation I want to have with a family to say, we don't have a way to get you to your home school. So I'm open to suggestions. I know Cindy in Hatfield, you folks own a van and you have paraprofessionals get certain licenses. We don't have that luxury.
Right.
I don't have a van. I barely have a construction vehicle. and nothing, that's just the way this district does it is with van pools. So, and I think that that's fine, but I'm just saying, I don't have many plan Bs in this department to meet the needs of a really vulnerable population of students. So that's the only caveat I put out there.
Gail?
The other thing that I would add to this, and I think I said it before, that I think is part of that landscape that Allison is talking about, is that the last time that we went out for these services, we had a single other bidder who was significantly higher and who had worked in the district previously, and we weren't as happy with the service. So more expensive and significantly less satisfied with service. Vanpool has been a very, very good contractor.
So if maybe I can help us move forward a little bit and sort of try to pull some of these different pieces together. One thing that I would put into this conversation is that, when we first started down this track, right? If you put ourselves back to Friday the 13th, what a wonderful day that was in March, right? We knew suddenly something was about to really radically change, but we didn't know for how long. We didn't know if it was going to be for a few weeks or if it was going to be for months or if it was going to be for the whole year at that time. And so I think that not only ourselves as parents, not only ourselves as a school committee, as a school district, everyone sort of was taking this piece by piece. And trying to do the best they can to still stay afloat and still try to figure out how best to function and still be ready if the school district was to have opened back up, if the governor had allowed for schools to reopen and all of what that could have mean. Obviously, we didn't go there, but if that would have happened in mid-April, we would have wanted our services back that we had contracted for, right? So I guess in my mind, as I try to think through that, I think that the proposal that they have put forward so far of 75% during those first 2 months of trying to figure it out, and then dropping down to 48% in the last month for when it was clear that we were not returning to school and not using their services and laying off their staff. Of course we want to be fiscally minded, and yet I still feel like with all the sort of recognition of what we're trying to do as a school district and what we're going to need to be doing in the future, I do propose that we go forward with funding to them. And maybe it can be something like meeting them with that 74% or 75%, for those 2 months, 48% for the month, for the next 4 weeks of middle of May through middle of June. And that we propose that if they are able to come back online and bring us, services to bring us meals for middle of June through middle of August to get us through the summer 2 months, that we can then come up with sort of a plan B that would include their usage, their use of their services for those 2 months. So I don't have an exact wording yet. I'm not sure, but I think that's what I'm inclined to head towards.
So I'm thinking that what you're saying is we accept the 75 till May 15th and the 48 after. However, we increase that if they deliver meals to basically what Durham got?
Well, so what is, Dale, right now the services and the contract would end middle of June, right? There is no contract in place for the month of July and August, or those 8 to 9 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever. So there's nothing contracted and there's nothing in our budget, correct? Dale?
Correct.
So, I mean, I can imagine then that what we're talking about is not going to cover any kind of overhead, because those 2 months of off time that they would already be paying, right? You don't get to turn your insurance off just because you're not using your car for a month or 2 months in the summer. So their annual fee probably included most of those fixed costs that they're going to be accruing in those 2 months. So most of what I could imagine that they would put forward as a financial incursion for those 2 months would be much more about bringing staff back on and hiring those staff. Dale, do you think that that's probably a reasonable assertion? So
It sounds reasonable to me, but it's that level of detail is not included in bids. So, I can't say with any certainty that's
right. But our bid does cover basically 10 months of payments and 10 months of use. And it's possible that they may be, again, most of those fixed costs are probably covered in our, put into 10 months, that would be a 12-month sort of payment.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to make this more complicated than it is, but I'll just say it explains my hesitancy in answering with certitude, is that Vanpool uses the same vehicles for multiple districts at times. So it's a little bit hazier, because they only use them for a very short period in Easthampton, and then they have them available to use in other places the rest of the day. And the other thing that makes it harder to be black and white is that we would contract with them for summer special ed transportation in some cases.
Right. Well, and that exactly.
A separate, different contract.
And so they may also be doing summer business with their own vans as well, and doing summer camps that may or may
Exactly.
not.
And they do adult daycare. They do all kinds of things with those vehicles. It's not just public school special ed transportation.
Shannon?
I just want to put it out there. At first I wasn't in agreement with any of the Vanpool situation, but the more I thought about it, I've actually used their services. When we first moved to Easthampton, we were considered homeless. So you know what? It's essential. We need them. And there are very, very, very few companies that will provide the service in the fall. We need to just pay them.
Dale, could you clarify just one thing, since you did mention that we have used them for the summer before? Do you have I'm not saying what that contract was, if you have that exact number, but do you have a approximate number?
I don't. It's been pretty, it's not been usual, but it's happened.
All right, so it sounds like we're back to, let's just, do we want a motion to just pay the 75 to May 15th and the 48 onward? Is that where we're back to?
Can I ask one last clarifying question too? Sorry.
That's okay.
This is the transportation, again, is potentially available through the CARES Act too, right? I mean, I'm sure we're trying to put a lot of things into that, but transportation is one of those things that we could potentially get reimbursed for within the CARES Act, correct? Within the schools portion of the CARES Act.
It's not crystal clear. We've certainly discussed it on that committee that's working on all of those applications. All of that money is designed to make municipalities, departments, school departments whole for money that they didn't have budgeted for that purpose.
Right.
And we had money budgeted for transporting kids.
Yeah.
we didn't have money budgeted to deliver meals. And,
Right.
and whether there's a distinction there has not yet been determined.
Okay, but so then to that point, potentially we could include, if we were to seek a contract for summer meal delivery based off some previous type of contract around special needs use of vans in the summer, that money was not budgeted for, so that budget potentially could be included in that funding source.
Yep. In the, it's potentially reimbursable, even not summer, but we don't know what will be ruled out and ruled in. I think it's the chair's intent to apply for it for the school year, but it's clearer cut in the summer for sure.
And I'm sure there's 15 things we're trying to put into a 10 item kind of list. But I just wanted to point that out as we're trying to look at funding for of ways to try to look at still doing this for the summer.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Well, I was just going to ask if you wanted to field a motion.
I'm thinking it's time.
Okay, well, let's get on the table if people want continued discussion. I would like to move that we approve to pay 75% up through the May date that was provided, and then 48% for the remainder of the school year, with the understanding that discussions will take place about van pool's availability this summer to provide services to go along with those contracts.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, let's take a roll call vote. Maren?
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Lori?
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Marissa?
Marissa Curry, aye.
Mayor?
Mary LaChapelle, aye.
Jonathan?
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Shannon?
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Cynthia Kuzensky, aye. That was a long one, a hard one. These are hard times.
Do we need to have a motion about seeking an additional contract for the summer, or is that something that's Dr. Leclaire, you're sort of authorized to be able to do as we find need and stuff like that?
Can't hear you. Allison, you're still muted. That's okay.
I think that Dale and I can work on that with, that would be next year's budget, if I'm correct. And, we could, that might be money, again, that would be reimbursable through the CARES Act. So I think if it's for a concrete service, I think we could explore that.
All right. Let's go on to survey results.
While I still have Dale here, though, because I want to just circle back. I said to the mayor and to a few of you earlier that I would just give you a little bit of a budget update, so I don't want to forget to do that.
Okay.
And while Dale is still here, Marissa, can you share again with me?
I think you should be able to still do.
Okay. Let me try again. Yeah. Let's see where my budget is. Oh, I think it's in the way. There it is. Okay, I just wanted to share with you just a quick synopsis of kind of the budget and where we are. So we had the 0% budget that was approved by City Council last week. And as a result of that, we reduced our budget by 1.5 teachers and 3.6 paraeducators. But remember that I just want to be clear that we made some of these adjustments due to lower enrollments. So we thought we would be in a good place. And one of those teachers is on a recall list. So she will have the ability to get back, come back. So, when a position opens up. So I just want to point out we've talked about some of those things. But now I also want to kind of put on your radar, if you have your ear to the ground and you've been listening to the financial discussions at the state and national level, you know that cities, states, nationally, finances are hurting. And so we have been, I don't want to say told, but we have heard that our Chapter 70 funds could be reduced. And so part of our conversations have included what we would do if less Chapter 70 funding came in. I think it would be a lot to ask the city to kind of shore up a deficit that the schools have, because the city is hurting as well. You know, I mean, they're not bringing in revenue during this closure, so this impacts everyone. So I've taken a look with my administrative team around how we could make some further reductions if we have to. And I want to kind of be transparent and share that information with you. So if we were told tomorrow that we had to reduce another 5% from our budget, what I have here for you to look at is two areas that we would rely on. One would be that CARES grant that we've already covered tonight, which is in the amount of $184,000 for the district. So we would use those funds for things like professional development, the purchasing of curriculum. We would use it for just like everyday kind of things that we need, subscriptions, that sort of thing. If we needed to put a teacher in there, we would, although it would be something that we wouldn't necessarily want to do because it would be hard to get that teacher back in the district budget the following year. But that is funding that would cover $184,000. And the rest of approximately $400,000, Dale feels from her end of year calculations, we would have some savings in our reserves that we could apply towards a deficit that could potentially come our way. So we could potentially save another $400,000 without touching more staff. So that's the message I want to convey to you, because I know that, you know, you get questions and I know that it's a concern for people in the community. Any questions about that? Okay. If I had to go to a 10% reduction, there are some cuts that we have discussed, and they're in no particular order, and these are brainstorming ideas. We feel that there could be a possibility to decrease a teacher based on our perception that not as many families may choose to come to school, send their child to school in the fall. We may have a class size that's smaller than what we anticipate now. So we feel that possibly we could take one more teacher away and shuffle some people around, and another 2 paraeducators we could possibly eliminate. I don't want to use the word eliminate, because we have a lot of things shift in the summer and people come and go. So it would be more like if we had 2 reductions, we wouldn't necessarily replace them. We would look at, we have a couple of classroom openings that we may not midsummer when we start to hear from families if they're still interested in coming. Decrease the diversity line. We have been in a long contract with the consultants from the collaborative that have led our equity groups. And as we get further down this road, we really are considering how we can empower people within the district to take on more leadership roles in those equity committees. So we would keep the contract in a smaller amount for consultation and for professional development, but we would shift some of the responsibilities around. The other thing that we are discussing, and I need to bring this to the union, is possible some furloughs for our staff. And that would, for those that don't know what a furlough is, we would consider maybe everyone taking a day without pay in our district. You know, like maybe a professional development day, like the day in November possibly. And that would save us pretty much one staff member, one teacher, if we took a furlough day. So it would impact all of us. It would hurt all of us. I don't want to say equally, but because we all make different salaries, but it would be even across the board as far as all of us would take that day as a furlough. So these are some of the things that we're looking at if we needed to go deeper into a cut. And so I wanted to share that with you because I know sometimes misinformation gets out there, and I'm happy to talk to you about any of these. I just wanted to share the information out with you. So are there any questions or comments?
Tough one. Very tough.
I guess I would just throw out there too. I mean, as we're looking through these different pieces, I think that it's also important for us to remember that we're in a contract year where we're going to be negotiating. You know, the start of the new contract that starts July 1st has not been negotiated, and you know, so that also has impact. You know, obviously, with any good fair faith negotiating, we've already put money into budget increases and stuff for that. And so depending on how that negotiation falls out over the next few months, that could also impact things as well.
Anybody else? And do you need that screen still up?
I would just switch, if you're all set, I would switch to the survey results.
Yep,
Do you want me to
that would
do
be great.
Okay. Where'd they go? I have too many things up here.
You do. You have a lot.
No, that's Zoom. Hold on. Can you still see my screen?
Nope.
Oh, shoot. It went away. Hold on. I think I have the survey. Where is it?
There
I
we
can
go.
sh-
It's starting.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Where's my survey now, then?
We're looking for the,
Maybe it's down here on a different screen. No.
next
All
one
right,
over, maybe?
Yeah, maybe I don't have it. But I can tell you about it. So we had about 350 people that, here it is. Here it is. Found it.
That's so much nicer.
477 respondents.
Oh,
Okay. Pretty evenly placed. I mean, obviously Maple's smaller. The first question asked, what school did your child attend? What best describes you? 427 of the respondents were parents and caregivers, and 43 were students, and 3 were others. In relation to COVID-19 and the remote learning plan, the amount of information I received from the following people was too much, just right, not enough, and none. And when we were pretty much in the just right category for most, you can see that's the lighter orange shading, so I think that's pretty impressive. The first line is superintendent, the second is school administration, and the third one is educators. In case you can't see that all. How well did the following communication methods work for you and your family for engagement? People really liked email. And it was kind of all over the board beyond that. How well did the following technology platforms work for you and your family for engagement? People liked Zoom. People liked Moodle the least, which is primarily a high school tool that we use. But I would say overall, this was, in the Remind app, where was that one? Right here. People did like that. And Microsoft Teams. Teams and Zoom were the two things that our teachers did the most.
Yeah.
What worked best for you to engage in remote learning? We had a variety of responses here, and I can send you the Excel spreadsheet. The primary responses overall trended very positively. People think that we made the best of really challenging circumstances. The two takeaways that we had was, one, we need to choose a platform and kind of stick with that. We were kind of all over the place because it happened so fast. But people would prefer to have one platform that's more universally used. So if they have a 6th grader and a 3rd grader who attend 2 different schools, they pretty much can just figure out how to navigate Zoom, and that's it, and they don't have to be all over the place. And people were looking for, the other overwhelming trend was people were looking for more guidelines for teachers around expectations. So just kind of firming up that piece. And again, the teachers on this committee will know that shifted kind of partway through. And, there wasn't a lot of pre-training because obviously this just, it happened fast. So lesson learned, those are 2 things that we're going to focus on going forward. And for anyone that wants the results in the Excel spreadsheet, I'm happy to share those with you. They were all overall really good. So that's all I'll say about that.
If you could definitely email out both this sort of summary and the spreadsheet to a whole committee, I think that would just be easiest. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I'm all set.
So the next thing is the Student Opportunity Act.
Wait, I gotta go back.
Another share. Okay.
Another share. It's up here. Okay, it's one of those things that honestly, it's been a while. I presented this to you, I think, at our last school committee meeting in which we were together. And then I said we would take a vote at the next meeting. And then the bottom fell out and we never took a vote. And it's been put off probably 2 or 3 times by the commissioner. And frankly, I think he's going to put it off again, but I think we're going to get too far away from it and no one's going to remember what was in here. The purpose of this was for the additional Chapter 70 money that school districts were supposed to be receiving. Well, we know that's not going to happen. So this is kind of a pie in the sky, if you will, for maybe someday when things get back to normal. So let me just go through it really quickly. I think it's like 2 or 3 pages. Commitment 1 for Easthampton is focusing on student subgroups. This kind of goes back to our students of color, our economically disadvantaged students, trying to make sure we're trying to provide opportunities to close the achievement gap. Our second commitment was around using evidence-based programs to close the gap. We are investing in a program for ELA and math at the elementary level. And when I say investing, we had a grant to pilot it last year, and we have secured another grant to expand it and the program into all of our elementary schools and up into our middle school. So it's grant funding, it's not district funds, but we will be using an evidence-based program that can help pinpoint and target the deficiencies of our students at the very youngest ages in ELA and math. It's computer-based. So I have kind of an idea here of the cost for the programming, for a consultant to help us navigate the program, for our literacy staff to do some professional development. This meets the guidelines of the Student Opportunity Act. And we talk a lot about how we will analyze our MCAS data to pinpoint some of our deficits and really devise improvement strategies around shoring up those deficits. One thing that we will be doing this year is the Illustrative Math program. That might be one of the curriculum materials that will shift into the CARES grant and doing the math professional development. These are middle level math programs. We don't have a strong core program. It's getting outdated. So last year we invested in the early elementary grades. This year we're investing in 3 through 5. So Illustrative Math is 3 through 5. And STAR Early Numeracy is the math software program that we're going to be using. Math Professional Development and SIPS program and training is specialized training for our special ed staff to work around very strategic points that they need to make with elementary students. And monitoring success and outcome metrics with targets. We identify the concrete targets that we'll use instead of saying MCAS will get better next year. We're going to break down what tools we're using to really look at MCAS, particularly like our early literacy screener and our numeracy technology, our numeracy software. And finally, we have to identify how we engage with all families. I will remind you that for this, we did put, I think, a survey out on our website, but I think it probably got buried because this was at the beginning of March and then we did the school closure. But the stakeholder, we did talk to our leadership team. We presented the plan to school committee at a public hearing and put this plan out on our website and shared it with the Education Association, posted a plan on our website, and any feedback, well, those dates are no longer in effect. And that's the plan. So I need a vote. Not that this means anything anymore.
I'd like to move we accept the plan as presented
Student
in case it
opportunity
ever gets
plan.
used.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? Allison, you can release our screen.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we can do a roll call vote. Maren,
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Jonathan,
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Marissa,
Marissa Curry, aye.
Shannon,
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Mayor,
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Cynthia Kwasinski, aye. All right, we're good. All right, so I think you are done, Allison, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. So on to accounts payable.
I make a motion to accept the accounts payable warrant dated June 4th, 2020 in the amount of $208,630.95.
I'd like to
I
second
second
that.
that.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Mayor,
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Cynthia Kwasinski, aye.
I make a motion to accept the school payroll dated June 4th, 2020 in the amount of $509,901.43.
I
second
second
that.
that.
Okay, I don't know who was faster.
As long as we're fast.
Okay, roll call. Maren,
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Shannon,
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Mayor,
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
I thought the mayor was before me, that's why I paused.
sorry. Cynthia Kwasinski, aye. All
Make a
right.
motion to accept the minutes dated May 26, 2020 from our
Second.
regular session meeting.
Okay,
Maren Goldstein, aye.
Laurie Garcia, aye.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Mayor,
Mayor LaChapelle, aye.
Cynthia Kuzensky, aye. Okay, so we're down to other, but before we do our shout out, I really want to ask that I want to set a date for return of evaluation forms. If you remember our last meeting, Lori was feeling that we were, and I agree, we're really pushing at the end of the year. And so she wanted to move it for our July meeting, but we need to get those forms in for the superintendent's evaluation. So what I'm asking is that everybody could send them to me for the 17th of July. That's a Friday. And I can get everything ready and able to present at our July 28th meeting. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Yes.
Very good.
That sounds good? Okay, so that'll be our expectation. So now we're just down to a community shout out. I asked for this last time, and I know everybody wants to weigh in because it's the end of the year. And I can tell you that this has been a really hard year. And I think a lot should be said to the people of Easthampton because we made it through a school year with really no notice as to what was going to happen. We didn't know week to week how things were going to change. So as much as I want to thank the residents of Easthampton and our mayor, who I think has done a marvelous job, I really, really want to say, oh my gosh, thank you, congratulations, we're with you. To the parents, the students, our teachers, our staff. I know I've spoken to so many parents and students, and everybody has tried to make it through. Everybody's made it through. We're all adjusting every week. Teachers have just done an incredible job of stepping up and trying to reach out. And I know it wasn't always perfect, but it can't be, not in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm the class advisor in Hatfield of our 2020 graduating class. And I just keep telling them, it is such a historic time period. At some point, you are going to have one heck of a story to tell. Graduation and what you lived through and all the challenges. And just as grandparents say things like, when I was a kid, I walked up the hill both ways without shoes in the snow, we'll have a real story to really talk about. So I want to personally thank the staff, the teachers, the parents, the students themselves. I just think you have all done an incredible, incredible job.
Thank you. Yeah, you said that very well, Cindy.
Yeah.
Shannon, you want to say?
If I could just add,
Yeah.
not just during the pandemic, but also through what's been going on in the last couple of weeks. I mean, this community is amazing. Our leadership is phenomenal. Just as a side note, I really want to congratulate Chief Motter on his retirement. Super happy, and thank you for all that you've done for our schools. It's been an amazing time, and the city has really stepped up.
Anybody else?
I will
I would
say,
just, oh, go ahead, Jonathan. Nope. I cede the floor to
I'll
the
let you go
librarian.
last. Sure. I'll say I'm really thankful for all the hard work that folks have done. I felt really privileged to be able to sort of hole up in my home at the beginning of all of this. And I really respect and admire the hard work that folks have been doing right along. But I also want to give a special shout out, just because I don't know if anybody knows about this, but Director of Maintenance Larry Karn and his team put together a giant 2020 that served as a backdrop for our high school students as they walked on their week-long graduation that I was fortunate to catch a glimpse of last week. My understanding is that was done unprompted, but I think it really sort of sealed the deal and sort of gave them, a backdrop for their pictures that was meaningful, and it didn't look like they were just standing outside doing this. And I thought that was really cool and really well done, and a nice touch. Of course, a shout out to the whole high school team for pulling together that week-long graduating event. That was no small feat.
Yeah, just a super big thank you to everybody. So many people have been involved. So many people have stepped up and done stuff that they didn't even realize they were going to need to do or how to do. Particularly our teachers, the students, the parents. I mean, so many people have stepped into this education and try to do the best they can. I mean, no one's perfect. We've all made mistakes, but everyone's tried to keep our students going forward and on track to move into the next grade and grow. So just big shout out, a thank you, and thanks to everybody involved.
If I could just add, I agree with everything everyone has said, and I think that, one takeaway for all of us is that I don't think people realize how hard it is to for everyone. When they were put into this situation, everyone's work life just kind of immediately shifted, and it's been like a 24-hour-a-day job, and I'm sure the mayor probably needs an extra 24 hours every day. It just is.
I would buy that.
Ending. Yeah. And and it was, and it's everyone from every person in our school district really has just put in incredible hours. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, and I would just add, along with everyone, all the wonderful things that people have said so far, and what the superintendent just added. But I mean, we lost so much so fast, and it's all very relative. And I think it really put us all in a place as a graduate, as a teacher, as a parent, as an elected official, with one very huge, very deep question, is who are you? So when everything around you shuts down, when you had so little to begin and now you have nothing, who are you? And our students, watching them on social media and seeing the clips of them graduating really showed who they were and stepping up. And Larry and the crew building the 2020, and I'm sure each one of us have multiple stories of, like, I didn't know that person was who they are in these kind of crazy, historical, but also very dark times. And the yet again upheaval of racism coming up again in the midst of just struggling to understand what's going on to all of us was crushing and is crushing. And maybe a little more so than the pandemic, because we always knew it was there. And now it's on top of everything else. And with all that, the conversations that this board has had and members of our city have had, and the service providers, the volunteers, the students, the kids, I won't ever forget the one kid who yelled at me, I canceled summer, but I got 10 years before you can vote. I'm going to let that go. But I mean, it is, who are you? I mean, that's what we're all defining individually and as a community. And I am, always proud and so pleased to be the mayor of Easthampton. But now I know we're walking into really tough, horrible, painful conversations around who has and who does not have during a pandemic, and who is not someone held as a whole person in our city. And it's going to be brutal, but I have I don't know. I have a hope. I have hope. We're resilient, and we all know how to push each other, and we know how to push each other to a great result. And the class of 2020, just bless you, and I know you're going to do great.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say something I said off the record in our last meeting. I'd like to say publicly, and I don't need to mention different districts or different towns where I have direct involvement, but Easthampton is a very special place, and I would like to thank the mayor and her administration for leading us through this pandemic in a very safe way and a nurturing way for our students and for the whole community, because it truly feels different. As I said, I'm not even in Easthampton right now. I'm not going to mention where I am, but it's different here and it's different in the district I teach. And I am very proud to be a school committee member in the city of Easthampton with the community that we have. So thank you.
We are a great city. We really are. So thank you so much. We need a roll call vote to adjourn.
Oh, sorry.
Goodbye.
No, I was saying I was going to move we adjourn, but then
I was going to second it. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I move we adjourn.
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Mary Goldstein, aye.
Mary Garcia, aye.
Jonathan Schmidt, aye.
Marissa Curry, aye.
Shannon Dunham, aye.
Mayor?
Mayor LaChapelle, aye. I was looking
Cynthia
for Shannon.
Kuzinski,
I
aye.
couldn't hear you. Yeah.
She was quiet. Cynthia Kuzinski, aye. So thank you so much, everybody. See you in July. Have a good night.
Be safe.
Well.
Be well.